Um, the last question. I want us to engage this issue, this tipping point. Did the State of the Nation address yesterday represent a tipping point? I'd really like us to engage this. It's an important question for South Africa. To hear what your views are. That question came from somewhere there. What's your view? Who's got the mic?
Thank you. I've got the mic. My point of view is that we are moving. Apologize. My point of view is that we are moving towards the direction of depending on or challenging the ideas of the West, and that's a democratic way. That's why I asked that question, and applying the system of the East, where we have less of democracy, and the idea of that will bring more change towards economical freedom. So my point is that we are currently transitioning between the very people who either colonized us and those who are helping us build our infrastructures and our services in this country.
I'm sure there are other points of view.
Thank you very much, President and the Team Ali crew for organizing this important event. To get onto the point that President has raised on our view based on the State of the National Address, I'll say that I think there is a lot of vacuum based on the leftist ideologies and policies influencing the development of the countries. So what we are trying to see, it is a minority trying to advocate the leftist policies, but because of the minority, they have to perhaps be radical or intolerance to the rules that perhaps I can regard them as suppressing the views of the other because they are not subjected to the leftist countries. Thank you very much, President.
Thanks for the opportunity, Ms. Patron. My views on the thought is that, yes, it is a tipping point. However, we also need to look at the fact that we've grown so much as a democracy that if you disagree, you're able to exercise your right, like when the DA was allowed to leave. And I just feel that it shows that there actually is no oppression, because whether they did it right or wrong, people in our country still feel that they have the right to express themselves. Whether it's right or wrong, another conversation.
Hello, my name is Edzai Cornelius Robo. I'm a maths genius, and thank you. So I'm glad that Timali is doing a great job in unpacking problems. So I just want to tell you that maths can be done. Everybody can do maths, but it's not the answer to our innovation in Africa. Now, addressing the problems in SONA yesterday, it just shows that we are barking at the wrong tree. That was an exemplification of what Africa is. I can write a book about what happened yesterday. It shows that everyone in parliament is trying to mimic a system that is not ours. If you listen very well, all the parties that were there had their own version of the interpretation of the law. They had their own understanding of the purpose of parliament, of which, if you look critically, you see that the root problem is not about wearing overalls, it's not about the speaker, it's not about the root problem is that we've just inherited a system that we don't fully understand, and we need to go back and critically analyze and say, what system actually works for us? I know in the Zulu culture, you have your, do you call them lekhohlas? What do you call them? Where the elders meet? Maybe that is what works. And I don't know if the crowd can help me. Why did the DA walk away? Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Edwin Banda from Malawi. Mine is a different aspect. But firstly, let me commend on the level of your humility and humbleness. In whatever I do, wherever I go, I always emulate to be one like you. My President, in searching for answers for the growth of the development of Africa, we should also concentrate on how best can we integrate other races in Africa, other global races in Africa. We have got white people who normally looks at themselves as not Africans, yet they are white Africans. If we walk in the streets in Pretoria or in Joburg, we'll find a lot of Asian people who associate themselves as Asians, not Africans. And with this mentality, they even transfer their wealth to the Asian countries, banking with European banks, Asian banks, but yet they are living and they are here and they will die here. How best can we integrate these global races in Africa and learn from their knowledge of business and whatsoever? Thank you.
Dumelang Babot, thank you for the opportunity. I think that the idea of tipping point is so relative, and South Africa is not unique in that sense. If you go to America, you have Ferguson riots. If you go to Germany, people are protesting against austerity plans and measures and that kind of thing. And even if, like 1989, how many people thought when the Berlin Wall fell, all hell would break loose? But it was a moment of implosion allows you to rebuild, if you think that we're imploding. But I think that we need to be wary and cautious and kind of take lessons from these moments. But when I do say that it is a global problem, I think it's a point of crisis for the nation state, for the concept of the state, because we see the state becoming more and more militarized, and that was the DA's problem, was the executive or bringing in the police, because the police are here to serve and to protect, not to suppress. And we have Marikana, we have all these incidents. So the nation state is in crisis. It's a hyper-masculine concept. It subscribes to, here we are defending a Westminster system of parliament. But yeah, the point is, the state is becoming increasingly militarized, and African feminism and other ways of thinking can open up new vistas of thinking. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Mr. President. Firstly, I would like to start with the moment I can't recall, but there was a time when you were handing over a pen that was given as a present to President Mandela. You mentioned that day when you give it to Mandela to say, you mustn't use this pen to sign the legislations or the laws into power that will be suppressing the people, if I may quote correct. And then secondly, what happened yesterday during the State of the Nation, there's a saying that says, if you live in a glass house, don't throw stones. So what happened, that chaos is what didn't start yesterday. It was cooked some years ago by the people who thought that it will never came to the point it were yesterday. But by then, they were in cahoots, trying to be in the same direction, calling themselves as a collective. But now, as the time goes on, the collective's starting to collapse. And at the same time, what I can also see in what happened yesterday was the democracy in practice. But now, it take time at a wrong session, at a wrong time, And it was caused because of throwing a stone while you are living in a glass house. I hope the House is understanding what I'm trying to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Prof, for the opportunity. Thanks a lot, President. I wanted to make a remark that if President was in the Greeks' land in the olden days, he would be punished the same as Socrates for corrupting the young people. The information is giving here to us is a consciousness information. It opens our consciousness. Well, President, I am an African. The African regeneration of Prixiga Isagasem, and now your African Renaissance. Where are we? Are we where we are supposed to be as Africa? If not, what happened? One scholar remarked that in Africa we have a democracy without a bourgeoisie democracy without a bourgeoisie to support it in Africa. Is that a correct assertion now? That's the question I want to ask to you. One last question is, this one was raised by one head of state. He said, why is it that we often speak about human rights unless we speak about right to humanity? Why is it that others drive big cars so that others can walk barefooted? Why is it that others live longer, 80 years, and others die 20 and young? Thanks a lot, President.
Okay. I believe that we are at a tipping point when we have jamming devices within the National Assembly as a means of trying to stifle press freedom. And also, I believe that when we have the police in the chambers, which is in violation of the rules of Parliament, then we definitely are at a tipping point. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. My contribution would be that what happened yesterday is a demonstration of many things. And one thing amongst those many things is that by its nature, democracy always has a potential for chaos. But there should be a reason why that chaos took place yesterday. It's a kind of democracy without values and the democracy without principles. In what happened yesterday, we witnessed what is called ego politics, group egos and personality egos. And what was absent there was the mass of the people of South Africa and the people of Africa. There was nothing about the people and for the people, but a lot of so and so, that party and that party. I think that's what occasioned the chaos, which is ingrained in a democracy already. And then in addition to that, I will agree with the comrade who said we are like people who are playing other people's game. Related to what you just said, Patron and Comrade President, we are worried about African solutions to African problems. And that equation doesn't quite fit because we've got world problems that are playing out in Africa. And as Africa, we cannot solve them as our problem. You said it, President, the money that funds Boko Haram comes from somewhere. The weapons that are used by Boko Haram come from somewhere. The ideology that Boko Haram is using comes from somewhere. It's only the victims that are African. So we need to take a world systemic approach to world problems that are playing out in Africa. My last point is that
Our first problem is a problem of knowledge. Knowing what our problem is. There is the problem of terrorism, the problem of corruption, and the problem of xenophobia. All those problems are connected to our colonial history. If you walk around in Tembisa, the foreigners that are being attacked are black foreigners. But the obvious white foreigners move around freely everywhere. Why? Why is that xenophobia selective? Because if xenophobia is an hatred and an attack of foreigners, the unsafest people should be white people. That question should be answered. My diagnosis is that our problem is that of coloniality. The colonial administration moved away, but colonial conditions, colonial relations, and colonial power structures are still in place. And we've been taught to see the enemy in each other, not in the real enemy. In Marikana, lastly, this is my last minute. You had poorly paid black police officers shooting poorly paid black miners. In the streets, you've got poor black people burning other poor black people with tires. But the source of the problem, the people who kept the economy when apartheid went, are safe and happy and enjoying. So we need to diagnose our problems correctly. Thank you very much.
Patron, in conclusion, as I conclude, I will say, I'll raise a question in terms of foreign nationals owning a piece of land in South Africa. What is your view with regard to that? Because we are Africans and we should view each other, or we are Africans, we should be a brother to a brother, a sister to a sister. That's my contribution and that's my answer. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. No, thanks a lot. I saw there are still many more hands that are up there. But I think we probably don't have time. I did think that there would be a great interest in this question about the tipping point. Because indeed, I think we would all of us agree that what happened in Parliament yesterday was very troubling. Was very troubling. Surely I'm quite certain that all of us, including the parliamentarians, I'm sure that all of us, and I'm saying including them, did not expect, and have never expected, that such a thing could happen in Parliament. So indeed, very, very troubling. When I've thought about what should I think about this, I've thought to myself that it's rather difficult to know immediately, because I sat in the same hall from 1994 to 2008, and either listened to or participated in making many State of the Nation addresses. And nothing of the sort ever happened. So I was saying that, so this experience of all of those years is immaterial, perhaps, in terms of understanding what happened yesterday. We have to think afresh. But very, very briefly, what it seemed to me, what seemed to me to be no, we are not at a tipping point, no. I am quite sure we're not at any tipping point. But what I think happened was in a sense summarized, the way forward was correctly summarized by one of the presiding officers, the national chairperson of provinces, Thandi Muntise, when she said, I think twice, that all of us need to learn the necessary lessons from this. And I thought she was right. But of course, she, in that context, she would have been talking about Parliament. That Parliament must learn the necessary lessons about all of what happened. But I think the problem is bigger than Parliament. And in a sense, I think the reason it was difficult for them, even the presiding officers, to solve the problem was that they were trying to solve it within the context of the rules of Parliament. That might be perfectly correct from the point of view of the presiding officers. But my reading of the problem is that the problem is actually political. And you don't use administrative instruments to solve a political problem. If it's a political problem, it needs political solutions. I have a wrong political point of view. You're not going to change it by quoting me a rule. You've got to confront the political problem. Somebody is doing something which you believe is politically wrong. Then you've got to say, let's sit down. Even if I don't know what the rules of Parliament say, even if you had the possibility to say, let's waive the rules and let's have a political engagement. We're here elected by the people to solve problems. What problem are we trying to solve now by doing the following? And let's answer that question. And don't say, I know you're out of order, you can't ask that. So I'm saying that it seemed to me that we're faced here with a political problem which is beyond Parliament. I think all of us, all the political parties and all of us, even as citizens, need to discuss this. What did that represent? Some of the opinion has been made here this afternoon that maybe we've adopted institutions and processes and practices which are foreign to us and therefore are bound to fail. Maybe that's part of the answer, I don't know. But I think so worrying and troubling was that situation in Parliament last night that it deserves that kind of discussion. Because even just looking at the office of the president, President asks for the Houses of Assembly and the National Pro Council to convene, to listen to the State of the Nation, where he's going to make an assessment of the state of the nation and tell us where to go. He is held up because I don't know who did what about signals, and then his own microphone won't go on. Then he must take questions from the floor, and so on and so on. I'm saying just forget the person. Just look at the office. Just even looking at the office, you say, but as a people, as a country, ought we not to say at least, let us respect this office. there's something that is politically wrong. It's not administratively wrong. And because it's politically wrong, let's isolate it. What is the political problem? Did we just inherit foreign institutions which we now can't manage? Or does the reason lie elsewhere? Is it perhaps what was said about small left factions trying to impose their views or whatever? Let the country confront this parliament and the rest of the country. What I'm saying, I think, was a political problem. And let's put aside for the moment the rule book. We won't discard it, we'll come back to it. But let's not start there. Because if we start there, it's not going to solve our problem.